Bobby Lee Claremont and the Criminal Element by Jeannie Mobley. Durant, Mississippi, 1:40 p.m. The train slowed as it rolled through the small town of Durant, Mississippi, but my heart sped up as Alphonse Bugeaud and Brian Kelly sat down at my table. The third man, the walking mountain, stood behind them and folded his arms. His biceps bulged and strained the stitches in his jacket till they were fit to burst. I admit, they strained my nerves a bit too, and I wasn't the only one. The colored folks around us had all eased away as far as they could. If these men were here because I had offended, no one was going to come to my aid. I swallowed and tried to smile. Bugeaud and Kelly gave me the once-over. I waited. After all, they'd come to me, so I figured it was their place to start the talking. Kelly spoke first. He had been glaring at me with those narrow Yankee eyes, but soon they cut sideways to Bugeaud and he grumbled, "Get on with it." Bugeaud shot Kelly a venomous look. "Ben mon le jeu," he muttered. Kelly didn't react. I guess he didn't speak enough French to know what Bugeaud had just told him to kiss. That did make me smile, but not for long because Bugeaud glared at me. "I just had a little conversation with my associate here, who tells me he found you sweet-talking Nanette earlier, trying to get information from her. It's time to spill it, kid. We know you talked to that copper as soon as you boarded the train, and again just now before we left Jackson. For the last time, who are you working for?" I guess Bugeaud thought he could get more out of me if he presented a united front with Kelly. I shrugged, hoping I could impress Kelly with my coolness and trick Bugeaud into telling me more. "Was it to you?" I said. The big man standing behind the others shifted his feet a little wider apart, which somehow made him even bigger. A trickle of sweat escaped my hairline and slid down into my collar. "That's it. The kid's working for the cop," said Kelly. "I told you before I don't work for cops," I said, letting him see how the very idea offended. "In fact, I would like to work. If you ain't working for the cop, why'd you get so chummy with him right off the bat?" Bugeaud asked, his paunchy face red and sweaty like a gumbo pot fixing to boil over. I glared at his interruption. I was hungry. He offered me food. I let him think I was innocent while I ate his corn pones. "And what favor did you promise in return for your breakfast?" Kelly asked. "He didn't ask for any favors, and even if he had, I wouldn't have done it. I'm no snitch." "In my experience, nothing in life is free," Kelly said, his words cool and professional. If Bugeaud was like a pot boiling over, Kelly was like an iceberg, the one that sunk the Titanic. If that fine officer of the law gave you breakfast, there were strings attached. We just want to know what they were. "Admit it, kid," Bugeaud growled. "You're in that copper's hip pocket for sure." "I am not!" I wanted to be cool like Kelly, but I could feel the blood rising to my cheeks. On the streets in New Orleans, there was no lower creature than a snitch, working for the cops. "I told you already, the cops are no friends of mine," I said. Kelly looked me up and down again, finishing with a long, hard look into my eyes, his icy gaze warming into my soul for the truth. He meant to make me squirm, but he didn't stand a chance. Not after all the practice Sister Mary Magdalene had given me. "He doesn't have anything going with the police, Alphonse," Kelly said at last. My heart soared, at least until he added, "The kid's nothing to us." "But we've got to make sure," Bugeaud burst in. I noticed he was sweating. "Look, kid, there's $200 in it for you if you just keep your mouth shut. What do you say to that?" He pulled a thick roll of bills from his pocket and flashed it in front of me. My mouth fell open. I hurried to snap it shut. I had never dreamed of so much money. I swallowed to prime my voice, which had dried up like a quince in the sun. 200? Just to keep my mouth shut? This was going to be the easiest money I'd ever made, since all I really knew about these men was what I'd overheard them saying on the platform back in Macomb, and I didn't even rightly understand that. There really was nothing I could spill to Sergeant Hayworth. But Bugeaud didn't need to know that. Kelly, on the other hand, seemed to guess as much. "Bujo, you fool," Kelly said. "I told you, he's got nothing. You're wasting your money." "It's a deal," I said quickly, before Kelly could convince Bujo otherwise. Parting a fool from his money was the first trick any criminal worth his salt learnt, and I was happy to show Kelly I knew how. "My lips are sealed. You can count on me, and if you need—" "You better believe your lips are sealed, maudit enfant," Bujo said, "because if I see one sign of you betraying Nan to those coppers, I'll be very unhappy. And when I get unhappy, Malcolm here gets unhappy." He jabbed a thumb back over his shoulder at the wall of man behind him. Malcolm cracked his knuckles. A vein jumped and throbbed in his thick neck. I swallowed hard. I didn't know what he thought I might betray about Nanette, but I wasn't going to let him see my ignorance, so I smiled, turning my gaze to Bujo, then Kelly, then Bujo again. "Well, if there's anything else I can do for y'all, anything at all—" Bujo made a deep noise of disapproval in his throat and grabbed me by the collar. He pulled my face right up to his. His breath was warm and heavy with garlic and onions as he hissed, "Mais pas ton doigt entre l'arbre et la crèche, n'est-ce pas?" It was an old Cajun expression and sage advice. Don't put your finger between the tree and the bark. "Beg pardon, Mr. Bujo, but does there seem to be some kind of conversation here?" said a deep, rich voice new to the conversation. Bujo released my collar and I fell back into my seat, breathing hard. Everyone turned to see 4 Negro men standing by the table. 3 of them stood a bit farther back, looking nervous. The 4th stood closer, his stance loose and easy. He was a large man with broad shoulders and big hands, though he still looked small next to Bujo's thug. The relief I had felt when Bujo let go of my collar faltered. This man couldn't do anything for me with 3 white men opposing him. He had to be crazy to even try. He smiled a broad, friendly smile at Bujo. A gold-capped eye-tooth caught the light and everyone's attention. Terence was hovering just to the side of the new arrivals, also grinning like a lunatic. Apparently, he had something to do with getting this man involved. I didn't know whether to thank him or kick him. I had been on the verge of getting on the payroll of a real live criminal. Sure, Bujo, and not Kelly, the man I really needed to impress. And true, I might have been about to be roughed up, but it was a first step and one that could earn me $200. Bujo smiled up at the new arrival. "Well, hello, Clovis." "Boys," he said, nodding first to the speaker and then his companions. "We were just having a bit of a chat with young Bobby Lee here about his intentions regarding Mrs. O'Halloran." The man called Clovis started a little and looked at me with surprised amusement. "This boy has intentions regarding Mrs. O'Halloran? Seems to me as he's a little young for that." "I ain't got intentions about nobody," I said, feeling sore at Bujo for threatening me and at this Clovis fellow for interrupting. "You can leave him here with me and I'll keep an eye on him for you, Mr. Bujo. You all go on back to your car with no worries. That way, no one has to feel too uncomfortable about mixing where they oughtn't to, if you catch my meaning." Bujo glanced around uncomfortably and stood, understanding that Clovis was coming as near as a colored man dared to throwing him out. Kelly didn't seem to understand that, or to care. "Say, that's a swell idea," he said, eyeing me sharply. "If you keep the kid back here, he can't say nothing to the cops. That'll save you a few dollars, Bujo." "But we had a deal," I protested. Bujo grinned and tucked the roll of money back into his pocket. Kelly dipped a hand into his trouser pocket, turning toward Clovis as he did. "You keep a good eye on him, boy. You understand me?" He pulled a quarter from his pocket and flipped it at Clovis. Clovis shifted to let the coin sail past him and clatter on the floor. The crowded car rustled with disapproval. "Let's go," Kelly said to Bujo, and they walked toward the door, trailing the hulking Malcolm, and my best chance to become a part of the criminal element behind them.